Yeah, I guess yeah. So the recording has started. Now, yeah, coming back to my experience. So finally, I landed up in a testing project. So last 1.5 years, I've been working in a testing project, wherein primarily I'm testing some mainframe systems. I'm testing Informatica ETLs, and I'm working on Unix. And there are some legacy applications that I'm testing. So if you understand my experience, nowhere analytics was involved so far. Okay, I never worked on R programming, Python programming. I don't know Java. So since being from a electronics and telecommunication background, I was totally unaware of these coding languages. Okay. Yes, I learned SQL only when I joined Accenture. Okay, that too, 3 months of training was there. So that is when I learned SQL, and I actually that was all theoretical knowledge. I actually started learning when I got into a project. So SQL was my only base in terms of analytics, and I one thing which I consider as an advantage is I am good at using Excel macros and overall Excel itself. So that is something I found very useful while coming into analytics. So yeah, this has been my experience so far. And in terms of getting into analytics, I started thinking about it 1 year back. Means last June actually I got rolled off from my data quality project, and I was getting into a testing project. That is when I started giving a thought as to what should be my career going forward. And as one of you mentioned, you did some research and found that data scientist profile or data analysis itself, business analytics itself is going to be the future in terms of data, big data. The same thing happened with me, but it was just that you guys are exploring it now. I explored it 1 year back. So initial 3-4 months, I was just exploring as to what kind of sub skills are there in big data, whether should I go for Hadoop, whether should I learn Python, whether should I learn R programming. So that is when I came across sites such as I guess there's one site, Analytics Vidya or Vidya Analytics. I don't remember the name exactly. Then KD Nuggets. So I went through all such sites, and then I got to know that R is the open source programming language which is having the most of the market share. Yeah. So that is when I started taking interest in R, and I started exploring and learning it on my own. But then by December last year, I realized I need to join some certification to get some value in market in terms of having a job in big data domain. So first I finalized my primary skill as I want to learn R, and that is when I came across XLR solutions, and I went through the content of the syllabus, and I was pretty much happy. I compared it with other syllabus, and I got what I wanted to learn. So I joined XLR solutions in the month of January. So that has been a transition phase for me, how I got into analytics, and then I'll walk you through the slides, and I'll tell you beyond January how I actually prepared, and how I got into this particular domain. Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone, whoever has joined a little late. I'll start one by one now. So this is the high level agenda of the call today. So I'll talk something about, yeah, Manur, what we can do is I'll just walk you through the slides, and as and when we are on that particular slide, we can take such questions, okay? Because I'm not having a look at the chats continuously. I'll keep it open, but we'll take this question, okay? Okay, yeah. First of all, thanks for reminding Rajnikant. I was involved in business analytics course, wherein primarily I went for R programming, and Tableau was an additional 10 days of session. So most of you might be involved in the same kind of business analytics course, which is of 50 hours of training, and initial few 10 days are of Tableau, and then we get into R programming. So I was part of the same batch in month of January. Okay. Yeah, same batch, Rajnikant. I was part of data analytics only. Okay. Bernie sir was my trainer at that time. Okay. So yeah, so we'll talk about the basic math that you need to brush up. We start with an assumption that yes, I've learned everything in maths, but there are few things that you need to brush up that which will help you correlate to the current sessions which you are getting trained on. Then I'll give you a high level overview of the statistical concepts which you need to understand. Okay, I would leave it to you guys to explore it further because those are already taught in the class. Just that I'll give you a high level of the names of the topics that you need to understand and explore so that you can relate to what is going on in the day-to-day trainings. Then we'll talk something about why you need to make sure either R or W needs to be one of these needs to be your primary skill and the other needs to be a secondary skill at this point of time. Going forward, both can be your primary skill and you can be expert in both. But as of now, why it is important to focus on one of these two. Then I'll talk about different job profiles that I've came across during the interview process and applying process. Then I'll talk something about how to learn from the ongoing online sessions that you're attending in morning or evening. Then I'll talk something about how to prepare the CVs and what kind of project should be there considering the level of experience you have. Then I'll talk about my own interview experience, the 3-4 interviews, whatever I've involved so far. Then we'll talk something about LinkedIn profile and how it is important to keep an updated LinkedIn profile. And then finally the key job profile portals where you should have your resume uploaded. Okay. So yeah, let's go with the first one. Just a moment, something. Yeah. So this is the slide. Yes, it happens, Rajnikant. So as I said earlier, it took me almost 1 year to crack the interview, one interview. Okay. So that is when I am in a position right now after 1 year of exploring so much that I can summarize all the agenda of this slide. Okay. So that I'm pretty sure you guys will also be on the same page. It's just a matter of time. So yeah. So one thing before I go into depth, guys, you need not worry if you're taking a lot of time to learn these things because I can understand. If you are aware of Yogesh, who has already been placed and joined as a data scientist in one of the Bangalore companies, we were part of same batch. Okay, before I run you through this slide, I'll just tell you what happens in terms of time. Okay, we were part of same batch, January batch. We had same amount of experience, 4.5 years of experience at that point of time. It's just that I took 6 months to crack first interview and he took 2 to 3 months to crack multiple interviews. So it's just a matter of time and the grasping power that each one of us have individually. But at some point of time, I'm pretty sure once you put required amount of efforts, you will be able to crack the interviews. So don't worry if you're taking some more time than your batchmates. It's perfectly fine. But don't lose hope and keep on trying and keep on preparing. So that's one advice that I'll give you upfront. Okay. Yeah, now starting with the basic math that you need to brush up. Ideally, this should be done prior to joining the class, but it's okay as you can go through the revised class or revised recording sessions, or you can go through the new batch as well. You can attend multiple batches. So things that you need to prepare is probability. So although probability, Bernie sir covers probability, what I'll advise is to you guys is that explore it on your own. Okay, we have learned this in our school days, college days, but go back and just brush up the basic concepts of probability, matrices, vectors, logarithm. So if I ask you what is the difference between log to the base e and log to the base 10 or log to the base 2, so at some point of time we assume that okay, I know algorithm, but it's important to know the difference between these things, how logarithm and exponentials are related. So these are the few things that you need to brush up. Random variables, Bernie sir, whatever Bernie sir is covering for random variables and normal and uniform distribution, that is fine. Yeah, if you can go to this reference link that I've put in over here, it's very naive in terms of as if it's teaching for some school students. Okay, there are a lot of cartoons and all those things. So since we have a long gap of study in terms of revising probability matrices, it's fun to learn from the site that I've mentioned below. You guys can make use note of this site and make use of this site, because all these basic topics are given on this particular site in very layman's term, so you can easily understand and relate and revise those topics. Okay, so these are the few topics. There may be other topics, but these are the key ones that you need to revise in terms of the basic math. Yeah, so any questions on this? Anyone? You can unmute yourself and ask. Okay, I'll take it as a no. So yeah, these are the basic topics of math. Then going ahead. Yeah, now these are the basic statistical concepts to understand. Okay, so basic math was in terms of probability matrices. Basic math. See, with respect to basic math, they might ask you in terms of probability. Okay, so I'll give you one example. What happened with me in the very first interview. I was going to come back to that in the later session, later slides, but now since you have asked me, I'll tell you upfront. The interviewer asked me about a scenario-based question wherein, if you guys are aware of Ahmednagar, it's one of the tier 2 or tier 3 cities in Maharashtra. So he told me that let's just assume that there is not even a single mall in that tier 3 city and you want to open a mall. So what would be your analytical approach, given that you have the historical data for Pune of different malls? So that was a question put to me, and they were basically checking my analytical thinking in terms of how I gather the data of different malls in Pune, in terms of location, in terms of population, in terms of customer experience, and in terms of customer buying behavior, sales and profit. And then how do I make use of that in setting up a mall in the Ahmednagar city or tier 3 city, and how I decide upon location and the area where I want to open the mall. So I explained everything, and at the very end, he just asked me, just give me yes or no answer whether the mall that you've planned after doing all the analysis and historical data analysis, whether that mall would be a successful in terms of profit, whether that mall would be a successful mall or a failure. Can you just tell me yes or no? So that is when I answered, what we say, probability associated with a single random variable is always zero. So that is something he wanted to hear from me, that you cannot predict whether a mall would be successful or not unless and until you go and set up and try few things. Okay, so these are the kind of questions that would come across in interviews. So that is when probability came into picture. Okay, so this is why it's important to know basics so that you can relate those basics in terms of analytics. So that's how basic math revision is required. Now coming to basic statistical concepts, these are the concepts that I've listed. You might have heard of these concepts. Those of you who have recently joined the batch, you'll be coming across these concepts. So I would advise you guys to, if go through them prior to attending the sessions if possible. I've put in a reference link over here. What I'll do is I'll put all this reference link at the end of the sessions in the chat box. Okay, so you guys can make use of this reference link, and all the listed topics are given very well over here. Apart from the last two, last two or three, the initial few topics are given in a very good manner, and there are few videos also available, 2 minutes, 3 minutes videos. So this is where I explored this descriptive statistics and basic statistical concepts. So those of you who have already gone through the sessions, you can relate to these topics, but you might be in a situation as to, if I say measures of dispersion or measures of position, so or let's say patterns in statistics. So what does that mean? So I'm pretty sure you might have learned about skewness and kurtosis. So that is nothing but patterns in statistics. So that is why I'm advising you guys to go through these topics. Once you're aware of these topics, you can easily relate to what is being taught in the classes. Okay. So any questions on this? Fine, fine. I'll take it as no. And okay. One important thing is that do explore this bias and variance trade-off, because this is something. Okay, I didn't get. Okay, please share these topics. Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. If possible, I'll just send across this PPT itself. I'll give it to either Barney sir or Ganesh Ram, someone, and they'll share it with you. Okay. So I was talking about this bias and variance and outliers and influence. Uh, I would advise you guys to explore these topics, because most of the interviewers are interested in these topics. Okay, because these are the things that a data scientist has to deal in day-to-day activities. So outliers and influence points, I'll just give you a high level of what is expected to learn over here is that you you should be basically uh, able to differentiate between what is an outlier and what is an influential point. Okay, so there might be an influential point which you might want to retain in your data set, and there might be an outlier which you might want to remove from your data set during your exploratory data analysis. So you need to understand how to identify these two things from the same data set. And second is bias and variance. This is in terms of, let's say if you introduce some bias and your results are skewed, then the variance would increase. And the other way is that if you try to increase your variance, then bias would reduce. So there's a trade-off between this. And speaking in terms of XLR training, there would be a session wherein model complexity would come into picture. Okay, so this topic is related to that. So I would advise you guys to explore and come up with the R codes in terms of identifying and dealing with all these topics. Okay, try to relate these topics with the R code. See, initially you need to explore the basic things. You need to understand first conceptually what these topics are, and then try to relate those in terms of R programming. So let's say first I explored what is an outlier, then I explored what is an influential point, then I explored the difference between them, and then I tried to come up with a R code wherein I can segregate an outlier and I can segregate an influential point. So that should be your approach. First understand the basic concepts, and then go into R coding or further analysis. Okay. Yeah. So these are the basic statistical concepts. Then moving forward. Yeah, now I'll talk something about primary skill. So we have in Accenture something called as primary skill and secondary skill. So I'm trying to take this slide in the same way. Uh, See, we are taught both the things, Tableau as well as R programming. Okay, statistical analysis using R programming. So it's important for you to understand and decide which domain you want to get into, whether you want to get into a domain where you will be classified as a Tableau developer and you want to work as a Tableau developer primarily your day-to-day activities, you're much more interested in preparing dashboards and come up with some analysis using Tableau, then you and your primary interest is towards Tableau, then you might want to make Tableau as your primary skill and then showcase that you know R programming, you know SQL as well as an added advantage. Or the other way around, what you can do is you can prepare yourself in terms of you know R programming thoroughly, you know the day-to-day syntaxes that you have to use, you know all the analysis, be it linear regression, be it logistic regression or clustering, you know how to do that using R programming. And you can show that you are a R programmer or a statistical modeler, and then in conjunction you can show that you also know Tableau. So that is something which I have done. My primary skill and my primary agenda behind joining XLR solution was I wanted to learn R. Okay. And even in my CV, I'm showing Tableau as my secondary skill. So the impression that the interviewer or the person who is going through my CV gets is that okay, this guy knows R programming, and additionally, as an added advantage, he also knows about Tableau. He has done some work on Tableau. So if required in future, if we have something, some analysis to be done, some dashboards to be prepared using Tableau, this guy can take up that activity as well. So that is why I would advise you to first understand what is your primary interest, whether it's R programming or Tableau. Then focus, I would say 60-40, more onto the primary skill and then less onto the secondary skill until you crack your first interview. After that, you can focus 50-50 and prepare both the skills as your primary skills. But initially, it's important that you need to identify one of the skills as your primary skill. So any questions so far? Okay.
System,
Yeah, who's this?
Nalini.
Yeah, Nalini, please.
We choose Tableau. That won't be data scientist. That will be Tableau developer, right?
Yeah, so I was coming to that
Okay.
in the next slide.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, guys, now the thing is that I've come across different job profiles. Okay, since I completed my class in January, I attended the February batch. I went through the recording sessions. So one advice which was given to me by my previous batchmate, that is Yogesh, was you need to go through the recorded sessions and attend the sessions. At least one session you have to go 3 times, okay? So that you have a clear understanding of what the session is all about. I know it's difficult to manage the time, but on weekends I would advise you guys to put in the effort and go through one session thrice. That is when you'll actually understand what is being taught by Bernie sir or Nitin sir or someone else. Okay. Now coming back to the different profiles that I came across. So what I've done is I've uploaded my resume, latest updated resume on different job portals, and I'm daily or weekly I'm getting 2-3 calls in terms of different job profiles. So I've tried to summarize few of the job profiles that I have came across. Starting off with Tableau developer, uh, since I had keywords relating to Tableau in my CV, I got calls for Tableau developer. You might explore in Naukri.com or some other job portal as well. You'll find that there are altogether different I'll come back to that question. Altogether different set of job descriptions. Okay, so if you are experienced enough in Tableau, then you can make your career as a Tableau developer itself. You will have to work on dashboards, you'll have to work on preparing the worksheets and the storylines. So that would be your day-to-day activities. If you get into Tableau developer, then later on you might become Tableau admin, and that sort of career path you'll have. Data engineer and data scientist are more or less the same thing, but theoretically, if you try to analyze data engineer, see, all these things are not well defined in market as of now. Okay, so what I've came across that I'm trying to share is that if you search for data engineer, that would be more related to Hadoop and setting up the SDFS infrastructure, MapReduce infrastructure. So basically, in terms of setting up the big data infrastructure, that is the kind of work a data engineer does. And if you talk about data scientist, that is something most of us aspire to be. So data scientist is more of R coding, Python coding, maybe Scala or Java, whatever language we use to make analysis of big data or normal data as well. So that is the profile of data scientist. Then I have seen specifically for statistical modeler only. There were few companies who gave the heading as statistical modeler, and they wanted someone who can do analysis on historical data. It's okay if you cannot do text mining or you don't know about Tableau, but you should be able to do statistical or historical data analysis and come up with prediction or classification models. So that kind of job profiles come under statistical modeler. Then there, sorry, is that a question or someone has unmuted themselves? Okay, someone needs to go on mute, please. So I'll come to this question. Meanwhile, coming to the data analyst profile, data analyst and data scientist. As of now, most of us are data analyst, and data analyst is something who is able to prepare charts and graphs in Excel sheet, analyze data using SQL in Excel sheet, and extract data from DB, who understands data warehouse. So that kind of profile is recognized as a data analyst in market. But when you add R, Python, and some other niche skills and tools to your skills, that is when you switch over to data scientist profile. So you guys need to understand the difference between data analyst and data scientist, and the job description. Even if you see the job description, and it says as a data analyst profile, but down nowhere it would be mentioned as R programming or Python programming. So those kind of profiles are mostly for MIS, someone who can maintain data in Excel sheets, who can extract data from database. That kind of job description would contain heading as a data analyst. Okay. And finally, there was one interview in a KPO BPO where I went, that was specifically for text mining or NLP. So they wanted someone who can do only text mining for them, basically gather all the raw data from different sources and somehow process that data and pull out meaningful information for other teams to work upon that data. So these are the different kind of job profiles that you will come across, and primarily the ones which I am focusing on is the statistical modeler and data scientist out of all this. And sometimes you might have data engineer as well, because people uh, they usually mention it as data engineer, but the job profile is actually of a data scientist or a statistical modeler. So understand all these headings in the job descriptions, and then try to apply accordingly. Okay. So yeah, now I'll come to the questions. How interviewers expect data scientist knowledge on Hadoop to map, reduce, Hive, Yarn, Peak. So I'm not sure who has asked this, but in terms of the first question, this one, the thing is that few of the companies would have it mandatory that you should know all these things in the Hadoop ecosystem, and a few of the companies are aware of the fact that there are not many resources in the market who know all these things, and in addition to this they know R programming and SQL and Python and Java and Scala, Spark. So there are a lot of technologies, lot of tools and lot of languages to learn if you want to be a proper data scientist. But there would be few companies who would demand that as a mandatory, and there would be few companies that would mention it as an added advantage if you know that. So you'll find all these things mentioned in the job description, and then you have to decide whether or not, let's say you have two places to go on a weekend. Okay, there's walking on a weekend where one of these companies mentioning all these things as a mandatory in addition to our programming or Tableau, and the other one is mentioning it as a uh, added advantage. So you have to take the decision in terms of how confident you are and other scenarios, other attributes or parameters you have to make your decision, and then apply to the appropriate position. Okay. So yeah, I would advise if you can know the basics of these things, that would be sufficient in terms of applying for interviews. So if you ask me, I have never worked on Hadoop, MapReduce, Yarn, Peak, or Hive, but I know the basic. I know the HQL language. I've just read about it and I understand it. I've never made use of it, but I know what is the HDFS, how the data is getting stored in HDFS using MapReduce. So all these things I've explored it, but I've never made use of it. So if in interviews they are asking me, do you know all these things? Then I can say, yes, I know all these things. I've read about it. I understand these things, but I never got a chance to make use of those things. I never got a chance to implement, but yes, I'm looking forward. If you give me a chance, then definitely I would like to make use of my knowledge, and I would like to work upon it. So this is the way you should present yourself in interviews, that you should not say that, okay, I don't know these things, I've never worked on this. So they are basically checking your willingness in interviews. Okay. So I've noted that point as well in next slide. So I'll come to that as well. But did I answer your first question? Okay. And the second one is what level of salaries we normally face or experience while attending different interviews? What is the expectation from companies for 25 lakhs above salary levels? So, see, there are a few things in terms of salaries and experience. Uh, People who are currently applying for data scientist role in market, what I've observed so far is they are 2 to 3 years of experience. There are 4 to 6 years of experience. Then there are people who are at managerial level as well, and there are people we had. Hema, I guess, who was more than 15 years of experience, and someone in our January batch who had 22 years of experience but wanted to learn analytics. So it depends upon your experience, and the salary would vary from company to company as per the standard policies. Okay, so one company for 5 years might give you 10 lakhs, and one company for 5 years might give you 8 lakhs. So it depends. Really, it's a hypothetical question, I would say, but you need to explore on this depending upon the level of experience and expertise you have. But one thing I've observed on Naukri.com is that whichever company is giving you more than 10 lakhs up to 30, 40 lakhs, they are expecting a lot. Okay, in terms of experience and in terms of the languages you should know, in terms of the programs you have managed, the teams you have led, and also in terms of the new technologies that you know. Okay, so if they are giving a very high salary package, then they are expecting on equal terms. Okay, so did that answer your second question? Or probably that is not answerable. Yeah. Yeah, so that is not answerable. You'll have to explore that part on your own. Okay. And maybe I would advise you to reach out to Srini sir, because I found him to be the best guide for myself. Srini from XLR. He's a well-known data scientist who is currently working in Accenture, but probably is going to. Oh, okay, he's left by this time, I guess, Accenture. So yeah, yeah. I took complete advantage of his experience, and these sort of questions he can give you appropriate answers. Okay, fine. So before I proceed ahead, any questions on the different job profiles, or no, you have a basic idea of what all different job profiles are there in market that you need to apply or you can apply? Are you guys okay with this? Uh, Okay. Partha, I would suggest, yeah, you can openly discuss about the salary that you should expect with Srini sir before, let's say,
No, no.
then.
Yeah, this no, no, no. See, this salary question, what was asked, what I feel is,
Uh-huh.
he was trying to ask that if suppose he is expecting someone is expecting a salary above 25 lakhs,
Uh-huh.
what would be the possible interview questions, or how to handle that in interview? Means
Okay.
what sort of questions he is going to face in
Okay.
that way? Means how is going to be placed in that role,
Uh-huh.
and what would be the possible questions? That was the question. I think this is what he was asking.
Okay. So if the question is in that way, then let me tell you one thing upfront is that salary is not something which will decide the questions that you'll face in interview. Your years of experience and years of relevant experience is something which is the key factor how the questions would be put to you. So let's say if when I went for my first interview, I was 4.5 years of experience. So that is when I showed 1.5 or 2 years of, I had to show 1.5 or 2 years of relevant experience in R programming or analytics. And the questions were on that level, like, okay, this guy has overall years of experience of 4.5, but the relevant experience is just 2 years. So the questions which were put in front of me were of a 2 year relevant experience resource. That kind of questions came to me. Now if I go for some interview, I have completed 5 years. Now it's mandatory for me to show at least 2 years and up to 2.5 years of analytics experience. So in this way also, if you're showcasing 2 years of experience or 2.5 years of experience, the range of questions would remain same more or less. But if you say someone is of 10 years of experience, okay, I know people are there in my batch or there are in current batch as well who are 8 to 10 years of experience. For them, the level of complexity of the questions would be at a different level and they would be asked in much depth, okay. Or let's say some resource who is just 3 years of experience and he's showing 1 year or 1.5 years of relevant experience, then the questions asked to that guy, the questions asked to me, and the questions asked to a manager would vary in terms of the complexity and in terms of the languages they know, in terms of the tools they've used, in terms of the projects they've worked on, in terms of the R packages functions they know. Okay, so it would vary based on your years of experience and years of relevant experience that you're showing in your CV. And salary is something which comes at the very end when you've cracked all these things. That is when the discussion happened, but salary is not something which would decide your type of questions in interview. Okay. Now, did I answer the question? Okay, fine. So, yeah, moving ahead. The next we have is learning from online sessions. Okay, now this is the key thing. So I'll just walk you through the points that I've listed and what I've Rajnikant, I'll come to that. Okay, yeah, that would be great, Satish. So we'll take the questions. We'll first go through all the slides. So learning from online sessions. Now this is my personal observation is that first attend the batch that you're currently attending, that you have enrolled for, okay. So just attend the batch. uh, it Most of the time what happens is that in the very first batch, if you understand few things, let's say initial few 10 days are on Tableau, so you completely understand what is taught today. But if I ask you the same thing after 5 days, you have to go back and revisit the recorded session, and then you click yourself, then something triggers in your mind, okay, this is what something was taught to me and I know this thing. But if you ask to prepare a dashboard using the same thing, that is when you'll struggle, okay. You'll eventually get to there, you'll prepare a dashboard, but you'll have to go back and refer many times to prepare that dashboard, okay. So this would be a situation when you're attending the batch for the first time. So I would advise attend the batch, gain the understanding whatever you can gain. Then the mandatory thing that you have to do is visit the recorded session if possible on the same day, if not at some later point of time, but revision of that recorded session is very important. So for me what I did was, I didn't had sufficient time to visit the recorded session on the same day, complete the assignments on the same day. That happens to most of us, so that is perfectly fine. But you need to make sure on weekends or after completion of your batch, you go through those recorded sessions, revisit those sessions, or you can re-attend the next batch that is there in pipeline. So I attended January batch, I got the basic understanding, I did my revision, then I attended the February batch as well. And when I attended for the second time, that is when things actually started making sense for me. Whatever was taught in January made sense in February because I re-attended the same concept and same thing which was taught by Bernie sir initially. So second batch when I attended, I got the understanding completely, and the same thing happened. I did not revise it or did not make proper notes or all those things. Then I lacked in completion of assignment. So I would advise assignments is also important thing. So what I did was, as advised by yeah, I guess it's free, I attended for free. So Bernie sir encourages you to attend the next batch as well. Not sure if the number of students have increased and it's getting fulfilled now, but yeah, that was something was advised to me. And in terms of attending the sessions for the third time, I would suggest do that in your leisure time. Whenever you have free time, log into the portal, go through the, take one topic at a time, go through the topic and work on the related assignment and try to complete that assignment. So that is how you have to gain understanding, revisit the recorded sessions and complete your assignments. So if you do the assignments on the same day along with all your batchmates or along with the same batch, nothing like that. Means you'll learn very quickly. But if you are someone who takes time to grasp things and takes time to learn all these things, then this might be one way of learning. Okay. But yes, you might not might, you have to go through the recording sessions for multiple times. There is no alternative to that. Okay. If you have to learn a particular concept. So that was about recording sessions. And coming to the assignments, I would advise you guys to work on assignments, because based on assignments, you'll be preparing your CV projects. Okay. So it's important that you work on your assignments. Then uh, coming to the supervised and unsupervised techniques, it's important to understand the difference between these two things. Okay. Why I'm saying so is because we go through all these things, but when suddenly an interviewer asks you what is KNN, whether it's supervised or unsupervised, what is clustering, do we have labels in clustering? So that is when we tend to get stuck. So it's important to create the difference between supervised and unsupervised. If you can note it in Excel, if you can note it in some notepad or wherever you want, but just make sure you understand the difference between what is a supervised and what is unsupervised technique. Okay, that is important in terms of interview. Yeah, please. There are a lot of cute dogs barking in background. uh, Guys, whoever has unmuted, please mute yourself. I am not sure how to spell this. If any one of you can. Ch- Chagna. Okay, let me try. I've never done this before, so let me try. If you guys can see, okay, muted. Now, you guys able to hear me? Okay. Huh. Now coming to the next point, ask questions if they sound brainless, even if they sound brainless. So what do I mean to say by this is that it's okay if you think the question I'm asking might be stupid. It's okay, perfectly fine, because that is how we learn. So do not refrain from asking questions. I would encourage you guys to ask questions to whichever trainer who is teaching you, or you can discuss that in your peer as well, means with your batch mates as well. So what we did for January batch was we formed a Google group, and that is where we were discussing all our topics, whatever we learned, whatever projects were provided to us. So whatever brainless questions we had, we conducted a separate sessions within our batchmates to answer each other's questions. So it's okay if you think that your question doesn't make sense, but ask them, because that will clear a lot of doubts in your mind. Okay. And discussion with peers is the best thing that you can do. First thing, you have to Google it yourself. If you don't get relevant answers, or you find something which you have doubt upon, you can reach out to your mentors, or you can discuss with your peers to get those doubts sorted. Okay. And yeah, I've got one quote on internet which says there is no glory in practice, but without practice there is no glory. So this perfectly suits all of us. We might do the practice based on assignments, but while working on assignments, we might think that it's only a sample data. How would I relate to a big data? But don't think about that. Just keep on practicing, because if you don't practice, you won't achieve glory in terms of cracking interviews. So this is a tagline of kind of thing which suits all of us perfectly. Okay, so keep on practicing, because that is something which is going to help you ultimately crack your interviews. Okay, any questions on the online sessions? Fine, I'll take it as a no. Now coming to the most important slide in terms of CV preparation and project. First thing, the very first thing that you guys need to do once you have completed your assignments and trainings is that you need to find one particular walk-in. Okay, read the job description, discuss with Bernie sir. If you think you're prepared to go for the interview, okay, you have done your revisions and homework. If you think you guys are prepared to go to interview, discuss with Srini sir. that is the I would say first mistake that I did. I did not discuss with Srini sir or Bernie sir before going for my first interview. So it's very important you guys discuss with them, understand the job description, understand what all things you need to mention in your CV, what all things you should not mention in your CV, how to present yourself in the interview. So all these things, Srini sir is very good at guiding in. So discuss these things with him. Now coming to the relevant work experience. So this is something Srini sir would guide you. If you have 5 years of experience, then you might have to show 2.5 of relevant experience. If you have more than 5, then he'll guide you how much experience you need to show in your CV. Okay. Then he'll share a sample resume with you and make you understand what all keywords should be there in your CV. In term keywords like linear regression, logistic regression, time series forecasting, ARIMA. So these are few keywords. Decision tree, random forest. So these are the keywords which should be there in your CV, and which section they should be, how your CV should mention those things. That is something Srini will guide you. Okay. Then he'll also guide you in terms of understanding the do's and don'ts. So I believe Rajnikant is from testing background. So even I have worked for last 1.5 years in testing. So that is something, uh, if I'm trying to get into analytics, that is something I should avoid mentioning in my CV. Okay. I should not mention I've worked on a testing project, because looking at a testing project, the interviewer might think that okay, this guy has vested somewhat of his career experience in testing, and this might be a fake profile. So you can mention, ETL testing. For example, I am working on ETL testing, Informatica, Ab Initio, ETLs. So I can mention I have understanding of ETL, but I cannot say that I've worked on ETL testing. So that is how you should mention in your CV. You should say that I know ETL concepts, I know what ETL is, I know data warehousing, I understand business intelligence, but you should not mention that you are working or you have worked on ETL testing. Okay, so that is some do's or don'ts in your CV, which Srini will help you understand. Then yeah, no, it's not like that. You should learn all those things, but it's important when you're working on large data which is stored in database, let's say Hadoop. Then you have to extract that data, transform, and get it loaded in some other source, and then do analysis on top of that. So that is when your ETL, someone would be there to do all these things, or you might have to do it on your own. It would depend. But if it is good, always good to know ETL. Okay. uh, ETL concept in itself, what is extract, transform, and load. You need not be master in Informatica, or you need not be master in Ab Initio or something else. That is okay. The tools would vary, but the basic fundamental of ETL would remain same. So that is something which you should understand. And if on top of that, if you know Informatica or Ab Initio, that is an added advantage. Okay. So that is how your approach should be. Then importance of project topics. So important project topics. So I would advise you, whatever experience I have had so far in terms of interviews, 4 topics should mandatorily be there in your CV. One is linear regression, second is logistic regression, third is decision tree. Okay, these 3 should always be there in your CV, because these are the most frequently used in market. And if you show that you have worked on these 3 projects, then the chances of your CV getting shortlisted are very high. Then the 4th project, you can show one on Tableau. Then 4th project can be of time series forecasting, that can be of SVM or some other technique. Clustering. Yeah, clustering is something which I would advise you to include in your CV, because that is also something which is most frequently looked after. So clustering, logistic regression, linear regression, and decision tree. So these 4 topics, and additionally you can, if you are confident, you can show time series forecasting or something on Tableau or SVM or some KNN or knife base if you are very much confident. So these are the kind of projects that you need to show in your CV. Then coming to the attempting interviews part, my batchmate Yogesh was encouraging me to apply for interviews, but I always thought that I'm not prepared for it. But one thing upfront I would like to advise all of you at this point of time is that even if you think you're not prepared, go for interviews. Okay. There are a lot of interviews, lot of job opportunities in this domain. Go for interviews, do some basic preparation and try to understand the questions, the kind of questions they ask in the interviews. So how it happened with me was, I'll come to that part in the next slide, interview experience. But on at this point of time, I'll advise you just go for interviews, okay? Irrespective of how much you are prepared or not. So let me just give you one example to convince you on this point is that I prepared in terms of logistic regression, everything in terms of project, in terms of R programming. When I went for interview, they actually asked me about mathematics. Everything was mathematics. So this might also happen with you. So they were not worried about how much R programming or what concepts I know. They were mostly interested what my basic math and what my advanced maths looks like. So you never know what might happen in an interview. The one which I cracked recently, there also I was not completely prepared in terms of all the concepts, but yes, I went for the interview and I answered whatever I knew and I took the interview in a direction where I wanted to take. So that is where I would advise, keep on attempting interview, because from attempting interviews only you'll learn what kind of questions come, where did you fail and what you need to rectify in the next interview. Okay. And as I said, take regular guidance from XLR mentors, whoever it might be, be it Srini or someone else. And yeah, I'll come to the question. And the last thing is revising. Okay, keep revising. So what happens is, okay, 1 week, yeah, this happened with me. I gave the interview in PwC in month of May. April I didn't go anywhere, and after April I went for my second interview. So there was a very huge gap. So I did not revise in between that period. So I lost entire 1 month of time. So I would advise you keep revising, and as the picture over here denotes, just when I thought I had it all worked out, I lost it again. So this situation you might face again and again. So that is where this revising is important. Okay, keep revising the topics. Yeah, now just how would I correlate my embedded testing, manual testing, shell scripting with analytics? So I haven't faced a situation wherein they've asked me about shell scripting or any ETL as such. Okay, they just saw that okay, this guy knows how to make use of shell scripting. So let's say if you have an account on GitHub, okay, are you aware of GitHub, Rajnikant? So it's kind of a Dropbox. Yeah. So GitHub. So let's say if you have your directory structure set up on your local machine and you want to synchronize that with the GitHub account that you have, then that is where you actually make use of shell scripting kind of commands. Okay. So that this kind of experience you can showcase that I maintain a Gibbuk account wherein I maintain all my work that I've done in terms of R codes and markdown files or whatever it is, and I synchronize my GitHub account with my local machine using shell scripting. Or you can say that I've worked in a project where I was supposed to create directories, delete directories, move files, copy files, rename files, analyze files using shell scripting commands. So yeah, it's perfectly fine. Even I've worked on simple commands only, move, make directory, yeah, line commands only, simple commands. So that is more than sufficient, because even if you look at Hadoop, so similar commands would be used on Hadoop. Just that what I've observed is they prefix Hadoop in front of it. But after that, most of the shell scripting line commands are similar to what we use in Unix. So explore on that front and try to relate that how I told you, taking an example of GitHub. Okay. And to answer Manohar, so far I have attended 4 interviews and out of that I have cracked the 4th one. Okay. And yeah, I'll come to the interview experience, but to answer this one, I've attended 4. Okay. Any good luck, good book you know on R? Nalini, on that front, the one which I am referring, thanks to Shushanta, there is one more person in our XLR, Sushanta. He's forwarded me one nice book in terms of case studies on all the key topics. So it's mastering R programming with R. I'll share the details with you. Okay, there are other few books as well, but that is the one which I referred for my preparation. Mastering the programming with R, mastering machine learning with R. That was the book I referred. I'll share those details after this session with you guys. Okay. Now coming to the next experience in terms of interview experience. So last few slides, guys. I'll quickly close this now. Yeah, I was asked scenario-based questions. As I told you, the example of tier 1, tier 2 city, setting up a mall, those kind of questions would be asked in interviews. All scenario-based questions wherein they'll check your analytical thinking. Okay. So I'm not sure how many of you guys are aware of LD algorithm, which is used for text mining. That was one of the guest lecture sessions we had in XLR. So I got access to that text mining NLP session from Bernie sir onto the LMS. I went through that session and I showed one project on text mining using that particular session. Okay. And one scenario based question was thrown to me by the CEO of the startup where I've placed, is that there are two documents, out of which one is known document, other is unknown document. And for us, both the documents are unknown. And the known and unknown part is for the client, but for us, both the documents are unknown. Now, what we want to do is that take a sentence, take a word from the first document or the known document of client and analyze the second document and identify the relevant sentence or paragraph in the second document. So how would you go about this? So basically they're trying to check your analytical thinking in such scenarios. So that is when I try to make use of LD algorithm and try to come up with topics and frequently used terms in the first topic, first document, in the second document, and then I drive that to a conclusion how we can relate those. So this is how you can expect the questions in the interview. It's all scenario based most of the time, and they try to check your analytical thinking. So one of the questions which was asked to Yogesh was, why most of the manholes are circular in shape? Why not a square shape? You might have seen rectangular ones, but why not square? Why always circular? So basically they are trying to check your analytical thinking and how do you approach that and how do you try to convince in terms of analytical approach. Okay, then you should be aware of the key R packages and the functions within them. Okay, so refer to some books, refer to some case studies, try to understand from Google as well by surfing that what are the key packages. Let's say clustering. So what is the package used for clustering, how k-means is used. So all these things means you should be aware of the packages and functions which are used for different techniques. Then CV projects, as I already said, decision tree, logistic regression, linear regression, then random forest if possible, clustering, SVM, one project on Tableau maybe. So these are the few important topics on which you can showcase your projects. Now, how to come up with the projects in CV? That is something where most of us are stuck. Okay, even I was stuck on the same part. Okay, I understand these concepts, I have done assignments, but how to come up with projects? So one example I'll give you is, right now I'm doing ETL testing of some analytics projects itself. What they are doing is, the project is of analytics, but I've got the part of ETL testing. So I understood the business objective. Basically, they are doing some kind of clustering to come up with some important places in a particular region where they can focus for sales. So that is the analytical objective where they are making use of clustering. So I got the domain knowledge, I got the background knowledge in terms of tools, how they are used and database. So I did assignment on k-means clustering. That was, I guess, on life sciences or pharma domain on the sample data set. But I related that to the telecom domain, which I'm working on right now. And I just showcased the assignment which I did in class as my project in telecom domain, and the whatever background domain knowledge was required or database knowledge was required, I actually made use of the database knowledge and tools and the domain knowledge which I'm working on in day-to-day testing. So that is how you can come up with your projects in your CV. Whatever domain you're working on and whatever assignments you're working on, try to relate those and showcase them as your CV projects. Okay. And then you might have to discuss further with Srini or someone else in XLR side as to how 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 the projects should be in your CV, that they can guide you. So what they'll guide you is how big was the data, how many variables were there, how did you decide to make use of k-means, why not k-medians or hierarchical clustering, then how did you did your analysis, what kind of R code was it, then how much time the R code took to complete. So these kind of questions you should be aware of when you're showcasing projects in your CV. Then coming to the logical questions, the interview where I cracked just now is they asked me a lot of logical questions. Basically, they gave me two strings to compare. They asked me to write a for loop, while loop on the board. For that, first come up with the logic. How would I compare those two strings and come up with the desired result? And then frame a program in whatever language I was comfortable in. So I'm good with VBA macros, so I made use of VBA coding on the board, and I came up with the project, or came up with the code section which was relevant to that logic. So such kind of logical questions you can expect, comparison of two strings, or for example renaming of a file, or whatever it may be. So there would be logical questions as well. Then finally in interview they are checking your willingness to stay in organization. Okay, so whatever I've showcased is that since I've stayed in Accenture for 5 years, and same thing I tried to showcase to them was um I'm planning to stay for longer duration, and that is my plan to switch right now. So those kind of impression I've created, that I'm willing to stay in your organization for longer duration, and I have my aspirations to aligned accordingly. That's why I want to stay for long. So that kind of impression you should project. Then you should showcase that yes, this happened with me as well. I don't know Python. I know R as of now, R and SQL. Okay, I don't know SAS. I don't know Python. So I showed willingness to learn these technologies and tools and languages. Okay, even they were encouraging me to learn these things, and I acknowledged that, and I acknowledged the importance why Python is also important along with R. So had I said that, oh no, I don't want to learn Python, I can make use of R to do analysis, then I would have got rejected at that point of time only. But I showcased that yes, I know R, and I'm very much interested in learning Python, because going forward both the languages would be required to do data analysis. So that is the picture you should create in front of the interviewer. Then yeah, prepare as per the job description and role profile. As I said, statistical modeler, data scientist, data engineer, data analyst, different types of job profiles are there in market right now. So read the job description carefully. Some of them might ask only for time series forecasting, some of them might ask only for text mining, some of them might ask only for historical or predictive analytics. So understand the job description properly, accordingly modify your CV, and then send it. Okay, don't just prepare one CV and then just let's say you have not shown text mining, and the post you are applying for is for text mining. So they'll upfront reject you just by looking at your CV. They won't shortlist you because you have not shown a project on your text mining topic. So go through the job description, that is very important, and accordingly put the keywords in your CV so that your CV is shortlisted, and then you can drive interview based on your experience. Okay, now I'll take few questions. Sorry guys, I'm sharing the screen, so the private is no more private. I would like to know, I don't have any experience and currently I'm working with government policy related to technologies. But I learned SAS from and I'm also yeah, Amar, what I would advise is, see, the domain is very fresh. Okay, one thing I've realized is that if you have applied for the same post 2 years back, then they would have expected you to know the R packages and the well-known functions. But right now is the time where they'll expect one step ahead, that they'll start expecting, okay, what is the algorithm behind that package, or what is the algorithm behind that function, how it works. So this happened with me also. I explained how LD algorithm works, but they wanted one step ahead of that. Actually, in terms of how it works in the background and not in terms of the functionality. So it's okay, you have learned SAS, because right now most of the companies in India have already implemented SAS, and they have heavily invested in SAS. So it's always good to know SAS, because most of the companies in India prefer resources who know SAS in addition to R. So, but R is more of futuristic. So R and Python would be the languages for future, and SAS is something which is still going on in India. So it's good that you have learned it, and I would not say it's enough by learning only SAS. You have to make sure you learn either R or Python, and you have Tableau or ClickView in conjunction to that, so that it gives more weightage to your CV. Okay. And how much programming knowledge is essential to crack the interview? As I don't have much, not even SQL, I have business analyst experience for around 1 year. So Archana, it all depends upon which company you are going into. Is it a startup or it's a big MNC? So let's say I went for PwC. It was a big MNC. So they don't care what level of R programming you know or what level of SQL you know, because they understand that if you know the fundamentals, if you know the concepts, coding is something which will come by practice or you might have done in past. So they are more interested in asking you the analytical concepts or analytical approach. They are more interested in how you think on these terms. So they never asked me about R programming or my SQL programming. But when I went for an interview in a startup, they were much more interested in the level of R programming I'm comfortable in, the level of SQL knowledge I have. So it will depend upon the kind of profile you are offered and the kind of company you are approaching for interview. Okay, so it would vary. So that is why I encourage you to go for interviews. Even if you are not prepared 100%, you are never prepared 100%. So just go for interviews, you'll get the interview questions, and in next interview you can work upon those and rectify those. Okay. Then have basic knowledge on Python scripting. So Rajnikant, is that a question or I didn't get that one? I'll take Srini's. Is relevant educational background like science maths key for these profiles? I'm completely into accounting and financial reporting. So I haven't seen any obstacle as such. Okay. They prefer someone because if you read the job description on Naukri.com, what I've seen is they give MBA slash engineer slash commerce slash. So the thing is that if you know the skills, your educational background should really not matter as such. And being from a financial accounting background, I would say you have added advantage, because there are a lot of companies who are searching for people who know the basic financial concepts and accordingly work on data science domain, means in terms of financial domain, and do some data science for financial work. Okay. So I don't think so, Srini, you should have any obstacle as such because of that. If you know maths and basic maths and statistical concepts and languages, you can work as a data scientist, then actually your accounting experience would come as an added advantage. Okay. As I'm from statistic background, I have stat analysis for 9 years. I know SPSS, Minitab, R. I don't know any programming tool. I don't have any programming tool knowledge. C, C++, Java, SQL, any problem can I? Yeah, Manor, you can, because if you see most of the job descriptions, they would mention SPSS, then whatever other tools are there in conjunction to SPSS. They prefer people who know all these things, because these are already being heavily invested in industry, and they want people who know all these things, and Minitab and all the tools, SPSS, and what else is there, SSIS. So all these kind of tools, they prefer people who know all these things, and in conjunction to that, if you have added R programming, should not be a problem for you. I would advise to learn SQL. Okay, out of the four that you have mentioned, C, C++, Java, and SQL. SQL is something which is important because it is most frequently used to extract data or have a look at the data in the data warehouse. Okay, so SQL is something you might have to learn. because C++ I learned during engineering days, but I've never mentioned it in my CV or never made use of it after that. And Java, even I don't know Java. So SQL is something I would advise you to learn. Okay. And how can I use basic knowledge of Python scripting? So Rajnikant, you can say that you know Python scripting in addition to R, and you can show some internal project or proof of concept that you have done by using R scripting. Okay, so that you can mention during interviews if they ask you. So explore what is proof of concept, or try to show it as an internal project within your organization when they ask you. And did I miss? Which job profile I should apply, as I have no relevant experience, and I, Amar, the thing is that even I don't have any relevant experience, frankly speaking. No, instead of saying nobody, most of us don't have relevant experience. So that is where the understanding of your concepts, how you show your assignments as your CV projects come into picture, and how you convince the interviewer. So I basically, I knew in and out of the CV projects that I've showed in terms of how big was the data. Even though I did not work on that project, I made sure I asked all these questions to Srini and make sure uh, that this might be asked in interview. So I prepared a list of my own, saying how big was the data, how many variables were there, how did I decide to make use of logistic regression, how did I present my findings to client, how many team members were there, what was my role within that team, then how did we did data analysis, how did we gather the data, how did we do the exploratory data analysis, how did we treat the outliers. So you need to come up with all these things. How big was the project, how long did it lasted, was it 3 months, 4 months, 1 year, six months. So try to understand all these things in terms of project, how they happen in life. Speak to someone who is actually working as a data scientist or a data analyst within an organization. Try to understand how big data projects using R work in an organization, what are the different phases involved in the project, and then come up with a list of questions of your own and try to answer them with the help of some mentors or some guidance. Okay, and then you can confidently speak about that in the interviews. So that was my approach. I spoke to Srini. Since we both were from Accenture, I could relate how project are conducted in Accenture and what would be the duration, what would be the team size. I discussed all these things, how big should be the data for each of the projects, how many variables, how did I finalize one technique to be used, why did not I make use of the other technique, what other techniques was I considering, then how did I improve the accuracy of the model. So all these questions I discussed with Srini, and when I got answers from him for all those questions, that is when I was in a position to confidently speak about that as my actual project during interviews. Okay. Manohar, I didn't get your question. SQL. Yeah, SQL. You need to learn SQL if I understand correctly. SQL. Fatima, I'm from accounting background, but I work in customer service. I have 6 years experience in this and don't know any other languages. So Fatima, then I would say you are in right position right now, right place. You're learning R programming and Tableau, I guess. So keep on attending the sessions, and once you're done with the sessions and assignments, then discuss these things with Srini sir, and he can provide you further guidance in terms of your work experience and what you need to show and which profile would suit you. Okay. Then Rajnikant, my company is totally electronic product based company. Will they go through my company details? See, the thing is that you can say there is a small team of data analyst or data scientist working within your company, and then you might have to make them understand, Rajnikant, that why did they set up a small team of data scientists and what kind of work you're doing and analyzing historical data and coming up with predictive models, and how it is helping your company to perform or plan or make data driven decisions. So that way you might have to relate, even if it's a product company. why they have formed a team and what is the importance of your team, the team size, and what work you are doing and how it is helping in making data driven decisions in your small organization. Okay. Comprised of lawyers and tech policy analysts. Amar, I would advise you to further discuss this with Srini sir. Okay, he is much more expert on this. That's fine, Rajnikant. If all the details are in terms of electronic products, doesn't matter. Every company would need a data scientist or a data analyst for analyzing whatever data they have and make much more smarter decisions. Okay. Uh, Fine. I learned SAS language and I know basics of SAS, but I've never worked on practical scenario. So I guess I've answered this question to you, Amar. It's okay to learn SAS and discuss this with Srini and try to understand if you need to show a project on SAS as well. Okay, because if not, then how should you project SAS? He'll guide you on this front. Because try to show more on R or Python or Tableau if you at all want to get into analytics. SAS is something Srini is working on in Accenture or was working on in Accenture, so he'll better guide you on this, how to showcase the experience on SAS. Okay, what all? Yeah, I'll come to LinkedIn profile. Okay, I'll take this as the last question on this slide. My concern is must need to represent myself in right way other. It's okay. It's okay. Rajnikant, you did not worry about this. So I'll tell you, right now in market, there are people who go with a fake profile. Okay. I should not say this on a recording, but the very first interview where I went for PwC, I did not take proper guidance. I showed only 6 months as relevant experience out of 4.5. I was little scared that they might ask me complex questions, so I showed only 6 months. Still, I got shortlisted because there are not many people. On that day, there were 156 people who had came for interview, and only 10 out of those 156 were for our analytics, means for our profile. So just imagine the ratio right now which is there in market. Many people are going through the sessions and certifications, but not many of them are able to crack interviews. Okay, so that's perfectly fine, but only after you start giving interviews you'll be in a position to understand what to say and what not to say. Okay, that is how you refine your profile. So I would advise go for interviews, understand the questions. It's okay if you fail over there, come back, discuss that with Srini. He'll advise you what you spoke was incorrect and what you spoke was correct. Then revise your CV, go for the next interview, and what mistake you did in your first interview, try not to repeat that in the second one. So that is how you improve yourself. Okay, so even in my second interview as well, I went for text mining and they immediately found that I have shown only one project and that too my knowledge is not sufficient. So they immediately got a doubt that whether or not I worked on text mining. So that is perfectly fine. That might happen, but go for interviews and refine your CV. Okay, refine your profile overall. Now coming to the LinkedIn profile, I would advise all of you guys to do one thing first. Turn off the updates. Okay, turn off the updates. The option that we have, whether or not to disclose whatever updates you are doing to your profile to all your connections, try to turn off that, because why I'm saying so on a recorded session is that until you crack your interviews, you might have to keep on updating your profile. So what happens is that, let's say I added R programming today and I showcased it, okay, and tomorrow I am adding some other skill. So when some interviewer or some consultancy person is going through your LinkedIn profile, they can easily find out that this guy is doing something in background right now and he doesn't have some relevant amount of experience and he's learning things on the fly and he's immediately updating on LinkedIn. So try to turn off that option and keep it off. I have kept it off for a long time and I'm updating my profile on regular basis. So second thing is that get endorsements, okay, from your peers, from your batchmates, from your connections. Get endorsements for our Tableau, predictive modeling, statistical modeling, whichever profile you are interested to for interviews. Try to get endorsements from your connections for those skills onto your LinkedIn profile, because nowadays recruiters do go to your LinkedIn profile and they check all these things, whether you have properly updated your profile and what kind of endorsements you have for the relevant skills. So not everyone goes, but yeah, there are people who do check your LinkedIn profile. So these are the two things. If you don't have, I would suggest now is the right time to create a profile. Okay, you must have a LinkedIn profile in place. It's important, even if we don't know how important it is, but in background, lot of things are checked on LinkedIn as well. Okay, and try to create a connection of people within your batch or within your company. Uh, what did I miss in terms of? Uh, I have to create. Yeah, Dheeraj, create a LinkedIn profile. Rajnikant, we can take your questions offline, okay? On one. Now coming to the last slide, these are the key job portals that I have identified. Okay, the most useful out of these, which I found, was Naukri.com. Of course, a lot of relevant calls I got were from Naukri.com. Then IIM jobs is something I've never got a call from, but I find lot of relevant openings being emailed to me, so I can directly approach to the company. Monster, I don't know, something might be wrong with my Monster profile, because I'm getting some back office work, data analyst work, and kind of part-time work. That kind of job profiles I'm getting from Monster. So I've not mentioned that over here. But Naukri.com and IIM jobs are the two from where I get most of the relevant data scientist openings. Then the third one is Indeed, and these three I would rate on the same scale. So first and foremost, keep your Naukri profile updated. Have a photo on it. That is very important, because having a photo would on your profile would mean that it's a, what we say, valid profile, or it helps in terms of getting calls. So have all the keywords as well. Have latest CV uploaded on this, and I would suggest every day just log into your Naukri profile and change something. Okay, keep your profile updated. Change one word, delete one word, then add again the same word, but keep your profile up to date, because most recent profiles are entertained on Naukri.com. Okay. Yeah, I'll share the recorded session. Okay. So yeah, that's all, guys, from my end. So I'll stop the recording now, and then we can discuss what questions you have. So just a moment, let me just stop the recording.